full record to this computer. No, avoid putting it up on the cloud. So, hi, everybody. This is Mike. Mike and I go way back. Mike is a DOP, a camera operator, a Steadicam owner operator, a general tinkerer of things, inventor of various little cabling things. Mike's got his hands in a whole lot of pots. Mike and I worked on a bunch of like crappy indie movies together way back in the day, some of them better than others. And then Mike went and joined the unions. So I think I just want to start, Mike, with you said you had recently DP'd for the second unit for a Lionsgate show and a Netflix show. You want to share a little bit about those projects?
Sure. Yeah, the first one was the Lionsgate, and it's called Private Eyes West Coast. So they did a Private Eyes. I want to say it ended in like 2019 or something. Anyway, it was in Toronto originally, and then they moved the cast or they moved the characters over to the island, so Vancouver Island. And so we did the reboot, which has already been renewed, so that's really good news. But yeah, so I guess it's like an action comedy. It's a bit of a what do you say? It's lighthearted. Um, but it was a really exciting project. It was a lot of fun, and what was nice is that you're sort of in both the action camp as well as complete just comedy, and those two things are shot quite differently, and so you get to kind of flex different muscles.
Cool.
And it was also shot really compressed, like very, very quickly. So we were always doing second unit at the end of each block. So each two episode block would have a few days of second unit where you're shooting simultaneously, um, which can be a lot of strain on departments and communication and that sort of thing. And yeah, just the world we live in now, everything is shot much, much quicker than it used to be. Um,
Uh-huh. Um, so you're heading up second unit. Were you working on first unit as well? Like you doing operating for first unit?
yeah, so I was the B camera operator on main unit, and then it was essentially like we alternate DPs because you have these multiple blocks, and so you're
Right.
alternating directors as well, and
Which is
certain
fairly
crews.
common for like television production too, right? Where you're kind of like one show is in production or an episode's in production, and then that director goes and works on the post while the next director comes in to shooting the next episode.
Exactly, and it sort of originated like back when seasons used to be 22 episodes, and so you're just shooting, and it back in the day when you had that constraint, a lot of the times the show would start airing before they were done shooting. And so you'd be on like episode one just came out and you're shooting episode 10. So they're still writing down the road, or at least they have time to change. But um, while we are shooting, you have your director and DP and they're prepping the next thing. Towards the end of the shoot, DPs are off on the next projects, directors, producers. And so I got the opportunity to shoot second unit for the last block, which was super fun, just being in the right place and having the right resume. And
Sure. And
I
and
ended
it,
up getting to shoot the finale to the full show, actually.
and sort of being like attached to the DP at the hip over the course of the show, then you're sort of the best candidate to come in and do the second unit stuff because you sort of observe their style and you know what they're looking for and what kind of stuff what kind of stuff do they have you like just like these guys might not quite be aware of sort of what like first unit second unit like what sort of content might you expect to see a second unit be covering on say a sort of a 10 episode Netflix show like this or I guess in different
Yeah,
like
that's a good question. So it really does vary. For the most part, your second unit's going to deal with things that are slower to shoot. And so like you want to have as few people as possible on the clock while you do tedious things like inserts or explosions, car crashes, that kind of thing. You'd rather, the whole stunt team is going to take 4 hours to set up this crash. Let's not have, an extra 100 people there.
right.
So that is sort of the primary focus. But then at the same time, especially in television, it would be any sort of reshoots, any sort of pickups. And so let's say you shoot your 2 week block, and now you have a different director coming in with a DP and they're shooting their block. So your last director still might have something to shoot, and so they'll come in and shoot with me, and so that sort of on the Netflix show we did that a lot, like a lot.
Right.
It was
So, so
great.
like action oriented stuff. If you're gonna be flipping cars, you don't need your A cast there and all of their support. Um, and then I get so like if a director gets into post and they're like, oh shit, we need this additional bit of whatever these pickups, then they're coming in and sending you out to head up those pickups.
100%. So like the big one that I did for Private Eyes was I guess I can't say too much, but a large space with 100 people running around and stunt choreography, sort of like a shit has hit the fan moment. And because every shot requires so many people to be executing, right? It's like you see a busy scene with a lot of action in it, and the irony is it usually shoots very slowly. At least if you want to be deliberate about what you're getting. And so you set up like a big Steadicam shot going down a hallway, and now I have to stop, with the director at 5 different points, and we talk about what are the BG doing at these moments, and how do we make sure they don't collide with me, and that sort of thing. But that was really fun because I got to do some lighting that we hadn't done on the whole show, and so I got to light up the whole stage. For both the looks that we had established before, which is fairly straightforward. I've seen them do it 100 times on main unit. I've got the board up. They know what, the 500 lights are doing. But then what was exciting was being able to establish a completely new look within that space as well, um, because of this sort of second unit type of scene. A really good example, or maybe one of the most exciting examples to watch of second unit would be from The Batman, the recent one by Matt Reeves. And so the car chase scene with the Batmobile, that's shot by second unit. And
Oh,
there's actually a great interview with Matt Reeves where he talks about how detailed their communication was about how to shoot that scene. Because it was, his sort of very difficult thing for a director to give up on, right? Like it's such a beautiful thing and you want to shoot it. It's the badass Batman chase. And apparently he would go from set and then go to second unit and be just on the clock for 24 hours.
wild.
You watch
Those
it.
of you guys that haven't seen that movie, shame on you. First of all, second of all, here I'll just post a little. There's a little cool little BTS theme. Funny enough, that was the one that like Deakins was like, this is the best cinematography of the year, and it wasn't even nominated for anything.
Yeah.
Some absolutely unreal volume work was executed on that film, guys. Like, you know, traditionally Disney just kind of has these, sort of like 180 degrees sort of half circles that wrap around the stage. But in that case, they were sort of custom building every, just incredible stuff. If you can, and you know what, right now they're working on they have an assignment where they have to like break down a theme from a bigger project. Uh,
Yeah.
Go and research something out of American Cinematographer magazine and find out like what lights were used and what cameras were used and like sort of show me the diagrams and stuff that they're able to find. And there's probably a good chance that one of these guys picked something from that one because I know that that was very much like a BTS fan favorite a little bit. Does anybody have any questions about second unit stuff? Second unit, first unit stuff? Anybody? If you don't want to like speak out loud, you can fire them off in the chat. It's okay, guys. Don't be intimidated, okay? Maybe they're all sick too. No, no questions. Okay. Um, so, so you said there's some action in this. Now these guys have to shoot their own action sequences in the next couple of weeks. That's kind of
Yep.
their final. Any tips and tricks for like lighting action, for camera operating action? Any like sort of quick little tidbits for keeping things safe that you can maybe pass on?
Sure. Yeah, I guess it's a very broad question, so we could definitely pick lanes and sort of jump into those. But um, from an operating or even directing standpoint, number one is tops and tails. And so when you shoot action, very often you have to break it down, right? So if you have a big fight scene, you might only do 3 punches at a time or 2 punches at a time, whatever sells for the camera angle that you're doing, and you can do safely. Um, very easy to forget, and it happens on very big shows as well. But you need ins and outs for the movement. So when I say tops and tails, it's like if it's just a punch, it'll definitely give us the punch before the punch, so their body's in motion when you cut in. So that would be a big one. The same with the operating and all that sort of thing. It's like you want to have an idea of what your pacing is, so that you don't go from a nice pretty shot to the cameras all over the place and then back to pretty because that's just gross to watch. Unless there's some sort of, thing you're trying to say with that. But the kinetic inertia of the camera itself tells a story. And you want to keep that in mind. The same with like if you have bodies moving through the frame really quickly, you're gonna have motion blur. And so something we often do, if you look at like the Avengers, they would be a very good example of this. I'm sure you guys have seen it. When you have a character moving very quickly and you want to be close with them, move the camera with them quickly, and all of a sudden it makes the shot feel smoother because their motion blur is gone because you're tracking with them. It also pumps a lot of energy into the background as it all blurs out from that motion. It's similar if you're shooting cars, like going quickly in a pass by, is like by whipping the camera, it makes the shot feel more watchable, a little less chaotic, puts energy into the scene. So, and then also the question of like whose perspective are you with? If you jump around too much, it starts to lose any meaning. I think Peter Jackson had a great quote from Lord of the Rings. He said he was cutting, maybe it was Helm's Deep or something, and they had to recut it and recut it and recut it. And he's like, eventually I learned that I could only have two or three shots without a main character before I had to go back to them. Otherwise, who cares? It's like
Right.
it doesn't matter how cool the choreo is or how beautiful the shot is. It's like if it doesn't mean anything to our protagonist or our story, then it doesn't mean anything. And I think that specifically is one that we're seeing a lot of people not nail these days. You watch these things and they sort of lack the soul. And I think that's it, is they're not really tying everything in. So something to watch out for.
Yeah, the plan was to do some of the sort of operating with the choreography today, angles to help sell punches and throw them safely. But me being sick, we were supposed to do it last week, and then legendary once in a generation snowstorm had the campus closed. So they're not getting it until next week, which is fine because this isn't due until like week 12. So this means they probably won't shoot it till week 11 and a half anyways. Oh, Hosa, you have a question. What's up?
Yeah, I was wondering, do you still have to maintain the 80-degree rule when shooting a fight scene, or is it more lax? Like if you just cross the line?
It's a really good question. What I'll say is that that's when you have very quick choreography, that would be the most strenuous moment with your 180. Um, it it scales the exact same for a complicated scene where there is no action, but the action scenes are where you're going to see people moving around and really quickly, and it gets easy to get lost. So the 180 rule, especially with action, is to me best to understand as it's not about what is this scene, like what is our access for the scene. That works great if everyone's sitting. It has to do with what is the last shot we're cutting from. And so you can, and Spielberg does this all the time. You can move the axis throughout the scene as much as you want, but you have to be cognizant of where are we cutting from and where are we cutting to. And so the same with action. So if you want to do some big wraparound, you could totally do it. But now that you've wrapped around, you can't cut back to the wide on the other side. Otherwise, it'll be jarring. So you could maybe do that wraparound and then cut to some close up that doesn't have an eye line that breaks. Now you can get back to your wide. Um, that's sort of getting a little bit fancy pants with it. Um, if you if you want the easiest path, I would say shoot with the 180 and create a blocking that's maybe a bit more linear. Um, but if you want to play with it, a good exercise would be to pick a moment within the scene and create a second axis. And then make sure you can achieve that well. And so it might be like everyone's fighting in a line, and then at this point, the bad guy and the good guy switch. And so on that switch, you'd have the camera go around with one of those people, and now you're on the other side and everyone buys it. But if in editing you decide to lose the switch, you have no footage. Um, and so that's sort of the way I look for it. And in a complex fight scene, you might just think of the evolution. So like especially in like kung fu movies, it's like we're here, now we move here, and then there. And usually there'll be a purpose, right? You want to get over here so you can do the table flip. You want to get over here so you can do the wire pull. Um, and so it's really just those connecting shots to make sure those are on the correct side when they start and they're on the correct side when they finish, and knowing where you finished. Um, so you have a lot of freedom in the edit with a fight scene to go from a close up to a wide, just to decide what emphasis you want to throw on. Like if everything was a close up, none of the punches really hurt. But if you're wide, 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 and all of a sudden on this one we go in close, it's like there's impact from that. But those transition shots are the ones that in my head are like locked in. You know, when we shoot it, we have to be really careful because it's sort of the keystone to the edit. Um, I hope that helped.
When you're sort of coming into some of these sort of action sequences, how often is the director bringing say shot lists versus the sort of involved storyboards versus sort of feeling things out on the day? Because you kind of hear different stories. Like some directors like to come in and just sort of feel out the scene and let it sort of play out organically versus somebody like Zack Snyder who's obviously coming in with very sort of intentional sort of vignettes that they want to showcase in these sort of specific moments.
Yeah, I guess it does really, really depend on who the director is. I've had some directors who come in and they know where the cameras are, what they're doing, and all that. And that way, I will say that gives them the most freedom. That gives them the most control. You can do the coolest things if you're planning to that level. But for example, on the Netflix show, I did one scene that was quite all over the place. I was prepping it with the director, so I was the DP at the time. And she's not like that. She wanted to give the freedom to us. Like we've been shooting the show the whole time. And so we sat there together looking at the choreography of the whole scene in her office. And then we came up with all the different camera movements. And so within that, again, it's like we're sort of figuring out the transitions as well as tweaking the blocking to be efficient. Because the last thing you want is to add an axis. You know, I just was saying you can switch your axis. You can also do that by accident with your people. And so if you have two people do this, but the camera doesn't move, now you have the same problem. And so we sort of just broke that down, had the whole plan, and then we went into it. And that was like a 6-page scene. We were able to shoot efficiently. We would have been really screwed without a plan on that one.
Oh, Hosa, more questions. I love it. What's up?
Would you still get a master shot of the whole scene, or do you just go straight into like cutting the scenes?
So in that case, we did not do a master. It really does depend. Most of the time, when we do a fight scene, your master works for moments, not the scene. Simply because hits only work in certain angles. And that also is very often the reason you might want to be moving the camera. Is like if you want to punch me in the face here, you could probably get away with that because I can snap back and you have this, it's a 2D plane essentially. That's every time you do a fight scene and you want to make a hit work, just remember that you're shooting a 2D thing, which is a huge advantage, right? Versus if you wanted to hit me in the side of the head here, so you're sort of forced for the camera to do this so that you have a bit like it can be behind, you have another layer. So I guess when you do your master, you'd sort of decide what moments does this work for. And then very often you want to save your actors from doing the whole thing when it doesn't work, especially if it's there's some heavy hits or whatever it may be. If someone ends up on the ground, it's you just do a pause, they go down to the ground, and now we do that portion of it and whatnot. You might even just want to break it up and say we'll do the master 3 different takes, the beginning, middle, and end. Or it is common enough, you might just do several masters. Now that's kind of the we have money way of doing it or time. But that can help because in a typical scene, you're usually shooting based on camera and lighting positions because those are the slowest, most costly things to be changing back and forth. And a fight scene, it just depends. What is the biggest cost to reset? And so if you do a fight scene and someone's getting really bloodied and then there's prosthetics or if there's some big stunt rigs you have to do, those are now the most costly thing. You know, we can't have them going back and forth in makeup when it takes an hour for camera positions. We have to just shoot it all out, switch the actors over. You might go back to your wide while they do that, shoot it all out. That sort of thing, progression.
Oh, that's good. Okay. Madison wants to know what your favorite camera is. I know, loaded like tool for the job and whatnot.
It really depends on the job that you do. Like, like what is like as an operator, my favorite cameras, I mean, and a DP probably the Alexa 65. Um, but it really depends on what you're shooting. And then also if you're a director, you're gonna have a totally different answer. And it might even just be what are we operating? Like every now and then a Sony Venice with the Rialto mode might just be the way to do the shot. I'm a bigger fan of shoot with the proper camera, and then when those shots come up, we'll figure it out. You know, so like on the last show we did, I mean, we still had the Sony Venice, but when we needed an action cam for like an interior of the car or whatever it may be, we would just bring out like an A7 and get the one little shot there. Um,
So
but
you
so RE,
stay in the one ecosystem when doing something like that. Like just
especially in TV, yes, like it's easiest to stay in the same ecosystem. If you have a good colorist, it doesn't matter at all. You can shoot on an iPhone and they can make it match. Obviously,
right.
you're losing a ton of other things because you have a small sensor, that kind of stuff. But um, keeping with the same ecosystem makes sense unless you have good motivation not to. Um, but yeah, personally, I just like the RE ecosystem because it's a very it's a color space that I can trust. The Sony Venice does amazing things, but if you shoot it and it's underlit, I don't trust the grain as much. You can get a little bit of purple jumping around there. It looks a bit more digital. Their dual ISO is bullshit. It does give you more light, but you have to overexpose it for it to be clean. And so, what's the point? Um, and Yeah, I find that one's a bit of a trick because if you shoot it the way you'd want to, it's like, oh no, it's too dark, flip it over. Well, now you shoot it and it's grainy. It's like, well, just give me the Alexa then. I'll shoot it all at 800 and I'll light it properly. At
Right.
least then you know you have to light it properly. There's a gun to your head. You can't
Yeah.
fix it. So um,
That high ISO is nice when you're trying to go get bioluminescent stuff at the bottom of the ocean, but if you have the budget for lighting, just stick at that 800 and away you go.
totally. Well, and if you have no choice, you can't do the lighting, then you get grain, and that's totally acceptable and fine, right? But
Yeah.
when you're trying to produce the best image that you can with resources, then in my opinion, you should do the hard thing, not the easy thing.
The average audience doesn't know the difference. Well, people in the industry do. For those of you who don't know, Mike mentioned the Rialto there. The Rialto is a system that Sony has where you can like basically you remove the sensor and the lens mount off of the camera. So you have the camera body processing the image, and then the sensor itself and the lens become sort of like this breakaway, almost like a GoPro on steroids that's tethered to the camera body. So the operator can kind of be holding just the glass and the sensor, and then this big cable goes over their back, and they're maybe wearing the camera body like on their back. Shin, you got a question? What's up?
It's actually Callum.
Oh,
I was gonna
oh,
ask Mike if you're shooting something that's very heavy on effects or something like that. How do you know how to bridge the gap between something like whether your shot's gonna be good enough or not when you're like really relying on effects or something like that because you won't exactly fully know at the time if that makes any sense, right?
So you're thinking like pyro or something like that, where the shot will
Yeah,
probably change while you're rolling, kind of thing?
exactly. Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's a good question. I will say, in general, something I even have to keep in mind all the time is as you're setting up a shot, when you bring in the talent, or in this case, when you turn all the lights on, the shot improves every time. And so sometimes you can be setting up a shot and you start second guessing yourself. You're like, oh, I don't know this lighting or whatever. You're looking at a stand-in or what have you. And you just have to remember you've done the math. And so like you do have to do your homework. You have to know what you're doing as far as your stop ratios or whatever it may be. Um, so that you can say, I've measured this, I put the person in there, it seems about right. But to not freak out, because when you come in and they have their wardrobe, they have their hair, makeup, they have all of that, everything is elevated by those departments. So I guess in general, like you, if you've done your homework, you shouldn't have to worry as much, and you should remind yourself that you have. When it comes to something like pyro, often you might just want to do an exposure check. A flame bar or something of that nature would be a good way to replicate what you're about to see. To a certain extent, you don't know. Um, and so if you have budget, throwing cameras at it is the usual approach. Like we did one on Shazam where it was at the end of the movie. There's a big fight scene in a fair. Uh, and we were shooting out on the pier in Toronto for months on this scene. And I don't even know if it made the movie, but at some point, throws the bad guy into the Ferris wheel. The Ferris wheel goes over, and the thing's like 120 feet tall. So what we did, we actually dropped a Ferris wheel. Um, so we have the main actors, they came in, they shot for whatever, 20 minutes or something. Then they left. We had, I think, 10 cameras all set up with lockoffs for that shot. And then you remove the characters, and now it's a VFX plate. You shoot the rest of the action, and then you put it on behind them so they're not going to die. Um, and then we blow up this Ferris wheel. It comes down, and in some frames, slid a bit out of the frame, or like not ideal. But because we had 10 cameras on it, it didn't really matter. So that would have been their approach to that. Exposure can be a tricky thing with fire, but you do have colorists on your side, and you just have to kind of gauge. Typically, when I'm shooting flames, for sure you want to be exposing on log in that scenario because you're going to use it, right? Like, it doesn't matter as much if you're shooting someone's face. You could be exposing off of your LUT, let's say, because that's closer to your final look. Whenever you know, like, we're not trying to manipulate the color on this. We want this to be how it looks. You can expose in that sort of fashion, and that's totally fine and adequate. And it might even be more precise because you're looking at a smaller gamut. If you know, okay, we have flames here, I don't want to overexpose them, but also I have faces way down here. If you look at it in log, I'll expose it so the flames are just on the edge of clipping. That way, in post, you can bring them down because they're not over the edge, but you know you're going to bring everything back up to meet in the middle because it's such a big disparity. I hope that helps. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it
Sometimes
definitely
like
does. Thank
with
you.
a car crash, you just have to like slap yourself in the face or drink a Red Bull or something and be ready.
Yeah.
It's just a split second. You got to do it. You can't miss that frame, and also you don't want to. If the car stops here, you don't want to. Oh shit! Which
Perfect.
can happen.
That's
Thank you.
where that experience comes in. Okay. Does anybody have any action-oriented stuff they want to ask Mike about before we move on? I want to talk a little bit just about like the things that Mike did to sort of to step up in the unions a little bit. So as I said, we were working on some indie stuff in Toronto, and Mike, you had joined IATSE as a trainee, as a camera trainee. You had enrolled in their program. But Toronto was a little saturated, maybe is the word. Like there weren't as many opportunities necessarily at the time.
Yeah, it might be somewhat similar to where we're at right now, post-strike,
Sure.
um,
Yeah.
where it's a competitive market. Like
Yeah.
you can get in, it's fine. Like there's things shooting, but uh, it requires taking it kind of seriously is all. Like I think in years past it was super busy post COVID just because them catching up. They had already committed so many shows, and so there's a big backlog. And during that time, uh, you might have found a bit more sneaky ways to move around just because the opportunity was right. Um, right now, I don't want to discourage anybody. Like things are busy, they're just slow comparatively. And a lot of people talk about how slow it is because there are places like California that are super slow. We're very fortunate right now in Toronto and BC to be bumping. Um, but so if you wanted to get into camera, currently the best method is going to be the trainee program, unless you're already shooting tons and you're out there and you're able to find yourself a different path. that's sort of what I did because I was ACing so much for people like Kyle and many others. I was getting approached by people from the union asking if I could focus pull for them. And whatever, I was young at the time and I knew, well, I've never seen a techno crane. I've never seen, all these different things. And so I joined the trainee program and told them that. And so I went out and I did my rotations as that. And then I was able to come in as a focus puller. Um, but at the same time, like having done probably 30 different movies or something before becoming a trainee, first of all, that's probably too many. Like, um, you want to get in there when you're humble and
That's
when
fine.
it's still fascinating and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You don't want to be biting your tongue every 5 seconds. But I don't think I could have done it without that program, just because I was able to watch people make mistakes. I was able to see a bunch of different methods as to how to get the job done. And what that really did for me was make it super clear that there is no right way. It's just right outcomes. I think a lot of people in every department get really hung up on this. Well, this is how we do this, or that's how I was taught to do that, which doesn't matter at all. What really matters is, did it get done well, and were people happy with the work that you did? And I think the training program specifically is a really good way of getting that perspective, because you'll work with people who are super effective, who you might just think are awful to work for. They might just be really rude or whatever it may be, entitled. And then you might work for a team that's super nice, but they do a terrible job. And those are important perspectives to have. Because you got to be able to just weigh, like, what are they missing, and what are these people doing that I do like, even if you know but I think you're always evolving, trying to become whatever version of that you want to be, right? And so if you're not always questioning what you're doing, then you just get stuck in your ways, and especially like right now, you want to be showing people that you're going to keep learning, like you're someone to invest in. We're going to spend all this time together. I don't want somebody who's going to get worse after day one. I want somebody who's going to get better. Um,
Yeah. But it's still relatively pleasant to be around.
yeah.
Um, let's see. Does anybody have any questions? Any questions about the IATSE training program? Any questions about like being a member? I guess you're technically 665, but also
667 still.
7.
Yep, I'm still with Toronto.
Oh, you're still like it's not sort of even though you're out in Vancouver, you're still
So
667.
in Canada, we have what's called a free flow agreement. So it's a sister union. Obviously, it's all IATSE, but we're able to work any of the locals without any paperwork at all. So you're
Gotcha.
welcome there. So then my dues get paid to the other union because that's who I'm working.
Sorry,
Like if
because you started your journey in Toronto, you're forever 667.
well, I can transfer and I probably will at some point. But for me, I just prefer the way that the Toronto local operates, and so that's who I'd like to represent with.
Cool. Shin, yeah.
Uh,
Go south.
I have a question. Yeah. So this includes like Europe and everything else as well for the union. You had to join separately if you want to go overseas, and like in Asia, Europe.
You need to permit essentially. So they will push for their local members to be hired. That's sort of what the unions are there for. But like myself, I've worked in many places that I was not a member of. And essentially, just what has to happen is the production or DP needs to make a case as to why they want you and not a local. Usually, it's not a hard thing. They just say, like, this is my preference. This is who I've been working with, the part of my workflow. And then you'd get a permit for that, So when I work in the States or whatever, I'll get a permit with 600, which I don't have to do any paperwork for. You do have to pay fees. You can really get a choice. And so it's just another tax on top of your tax.
Right.
Yeah, that's sort of how that works. But if you just get lucky and someone's like, "Oh, you want to come out? That could be fun." And then it's a very busy market like LA, you may not get that permit. So that might be a sticking point, just depending on where you're at. If you go to New Mexico, you might have no issue getting a permit at all because they only have two members and they live 4 hours away.
Yeah.
But,
Tanishk is asking about like for international students, any like barriers for joining, becoming a union member? I guess like I
I
know,
don't know as far as non-permanent residents. That might be its own thing.
yeah,
Uh,
typically you have to be a permanent resident, right? Whether that's a citizen or not, you need at least to be a permanent resident and have like an Ontario address. The problem,
I
Tanish,
do know of people from the States who have 667 or whatever, who have Canadian union locals. I have no idea how they go about that, sort of how that shakes out. So that would
yeah,
probably be pretty specific for the I mean the unions are really happy to hear you out though too. If you just go to IATSE 667 on their website, I'm sure you can call their office and they'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
yeah. I think the big problem, Tanish, is that like as an international student, like once you guys graduate, I believe you essentially have to be like a full-time employee with an organization, and union members are contract workers because you're kind of floating from gig to gig, from job to job, so it technically doesn't qualify. I know there is like a push to make some changes there, and I know the college systems are kind of backing that because we are in such a gig. It really is such a gig economy. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie, you guys certainly face more hurdles as international students than those of those of you guys that are domestic. There will be some challenges. You're sort of best off looking for work in the sort of intermediary in a post house or in a rental house or somewhere where you are an employee and getting a steady paycheck, or maybe you go down the road, you find a sort of a full-time job, or at least an almost full-time job, and then you're doing sort of gig work on the weekends until you can make the internet sort of connections to. But I don't want to chew up too much time talking about this. What should we talk about, Mike? What should we talk about? Adventures on set. Tell us your coolest story on Resident Evil: Return to Raccoon City. Is that what it was called? Return to
That's a
Raccoon City.
throwback. Um,
Oh, was that during the pandemic? You were
yeah, that was the
in masks and stuff for that.
November of 2000, or sorry,
Oh,
20.
like
Uh,
as neck deep in the pandemic as it got.
yeah, that was my second show back. I mean, it had a lot of hurdles, like COVID being one of them for sure. We were shooting up in Sudbury it was a 4 month shoot, and it was all night rain the whole time. And we shot into like December, so it got pretty hilarious with the rain towers in negative
I
30.
was gonna say, yeah,
Um,
that's not the time you want to be doing nights in Sud Vegas.
yeah, we did a ton of action on that one, and that was an interesting one where we didn't do any second unit. It was just the way the director and DP wanted to work. And yeah, I mean, we had one scene in particular that was really fun. I was the focus puller on that one, the focus puller. And there's a scene where there's a driver of an 18 wheeler who is infected and he starts to become a zombie as he's driving and swerving and it's hitting all these cars and all that. Then it eventually like crashes. Um, and so we were doing a shot where the camera's leading. So we're filming backwards at the truck as the truck is swerving and crashing into things. And so as the focus puller, I'm on the camera car facing them. So like I'm here, the camera's right there on an arm and it's, bouncing, but it's got stabilizers. And then the truck is, driving straight at my face as we're ripping, going like 80 kilometers an hour down this Sudbury road. And then we have cars that are planted and they literally bolted the chassis to the ground so that the cars, when they got crashed, wouldn't careen into buildings and whatnot and cause real damage. Um, and the one thing I didn't account for is I talked to the stunt team as like a person who's going to be a part of that. Just say like, hey, what do I expect? is this a safe place to be? How close are you going to get? That sort of thing. And I'm also the focus puller, so I get to know exactly how close they are to the camera. So that's my job. So they were supposed to be whatever, 30 feet away, no problem. They ended up getting 7 feet away from the camera at one point. Um, and I distinctly remember, so this 18 wheeler going 80 kilometers an hour right in my face crashes into a minivan so hard that it rips the bolts out or whatever, breaks the tie downs from the ground, launches it like 30 or 40 feet, doesn't hit a building, just barely misses. But obviously, all of this is coming straight at me, and so this car is going this way. And the one thing I didn't account for at all was how fucking loud a car crash is. You know, think about it. I don't know, like when are you ever in a car crash right next to it, like, not in danger or well, not perceived. Um, but yeah, I remember getting off, my ears were ringing, and I was just like, holy shit, that was wild.
You
Um,
won't be joining the audio team anytime soon. You get that.
yeah, that was fun.
Hosa, you had a question.
Yeah, I had a question about the union, but whatever. I had another question about do you ever get so sick of like the movies that you make that you can't watch it anymore because you've just like worked on it for so long?
Well, that's a good question. You ever go back and just watch?
It's a
I
good
tried to make my
question.
daughter watch some of our brain power stuff, and she was like, "Dad, this is terrible." Like, you have good taste, kid.
Oh, um, it depends. Yeah, I guess I don't always go back when it's something that's sort of special to me. I will. I find for the most part it adds to the experience. So you could watch a shitty movie that you made and have a really good time watching it because you have all these fond memories that you're experiencing, right? You're not just watching it at face value, like, wow, this is terrible dialogue. It's like, well, I'm not thinking about the dialogue. I'm thinking about the light that's above his head, suspended by my, belt string, or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it definitely adds. I don't think there's anything I've worked on that I wasn't able to appreciate more so as a result of it. But I also feel like that about movies in general, where when I go out and I watch a movie that I don't like or isn't my genre, I'm still able to appreciate a lot of what's going on, simply because like somebody's usually good on any sort of funded movie, anything that can make it to theaters. And so you could watch a movie that's god awful, but maybe the cinematography is really interesting, or they make bold choices, or you can sit there and just wonder like, why isn't this working? And it's almost always sound. Um, but yeah, so I guess for the most part, I think it just elevates the experience.
That's good. Yeah, I think there is an element of that, right, where you can kind of appreciate the craft, even if you're like, oh, this isn't. Like I remember coming out of film school and just you just kind of had this I kind of had this elitist approach, and then once I worked on a few movies, I could appreciate the sort of schlock a little more. Because I'm like, yeah, well, this dialogue is terrible, but did you see that? See that shot with the explosion? Like, like Michael Bay, for example. Nobody does action like that guy. I mean, you can't direct.
Nobody gives him any fucking credit.
Like he's amazing, absolutely amazing. Like there's very few directors where you can watch something on mute and it is arguably as good an experience. Like visually, the action is just unreal. Okay, what do we got? Oh, Madison wants to know what genre. What's your Madison's a big letterbox head. So she wants to know what your genre is. What's your preferred genre?
It's a really good question. I guess counterintuitively, action is probably my least favorite genre to shoot. I still enjoy those projects because they can come with funding or whatever, might give me tools to have a good time. But the reason being is it's super slow and boring. So if you see again like a car chase scene or whatever, it's like not super fun to shoot just because every shot takes 6 hours. Um, but drama can be super fun. Uh, especially because sort of every single element of filmmaking is working towards one goal. And so like in drama, you can really lean into that because you kind of know what the scene is. Yeah, like every department can sort of read that this is sad, and so you can make whatever choices to elevate that really clearly. Whereas something that's a little bit more slapstick, like comedy, which can also be super fun if it's good, but comedy's a tough one just because usually the characters within are the ones really driving and giving the energy to the thing, which just is less entertaining for someone like me. But really good comedy, often like Arrested Development, the camera is part of the punchline and that sort of thing. And so it really does depend. Yeah. And then shooting horror is always fun just because you get to like go pretty nutty and it's excusable.
Wearing your poncho and getting splattered with blood, etc. Hosa, another question.
Yeah, this might be like dumb, but I don't know a lot about like DP stuff. I watch a lot of gameplays and sometimes it's like really cinematic. I was just wondering, is there any like crossover between like DPing for film and like is there a DP for gaming? Or like is there someone who does that who's like who also does film? Because sometimes it's like super cinematic and I'm
Mhm.
like, is there a professional who's directing the
Are you
shots?
are you talking about like like cutscenes in video games?
Yeah, like cutscenes.
Yeah,
Uh,
so there is. It's a bit different. Like I don't know anybody who crosses back and forth. You definitely could learn one and then go do the other one for sure. The main difference with video games is that the lighting is a different department. I'm sure that a director on a video game cutscene where they can ask and tell those people how to light it the way that they want. But that just knowing that that's sort of how video games are built out, that does create a big change. I have a friend who works at EA, and this is sort of what they do. Um, and then for them, I'm told that it really depends. Some will have a DP, some will have a director who does all the camera work. Very rarely are there both, is what I'm told.
yeah. I
Um,
think like if you look at the credits, you'll see like cinematics director or like lighting, cutscene lighting director, like roles like that. I think it's probably a lot of like Unreal Engine background people that sort of ascend to those positions. You'd think.
yeah, if you're interested in that, I'd recommend looking up a director named Dan Tranchberg. He did Prey, and then the sequel. But so he started out in video games and he would do cinematics, that sort of thing. I don't fully understand what he did with the video games, but he broke out by doing a short film for the video game Portal. Like he essentially just took the opening scene of Portal and made a fantastic short. And that's how he was able to jump into film. Um,
Interesting. I didn't know
so
that.
anyway, he's now blown up and he's doing really cool stuff. But yeah, you could actually look. He's got a YouTube channel with I think it's just one video or something about that. Um, but super nice guy. He was great to work with, and it was very clear that his style was entirely influenced by video games. The sort of just how they communicate him between the DP and that was very visual and that sort of thing, which worked well for what we were doing because it was a very there's very little dialogue in Prey. Like it is a visual movie, and some of their ethos was like every shot has multiple things, and so it's like you have to plan it all out and design your shots before you get there because you're building the sets around them.
Um, what do you think of Predator Badlands?
I didn't see it. Not
Oh, you
yet.
didn't watch it? Were you salty that they shot it?
No, I was in the midst of those two shows.
Oh yeah, you should check it out. It's pretty fun. It's
Nice. I read the script, so there's that.
oh look at this guy go. Here just so everyone's aware, Mike took this fun picture that briefly blew up as a meme and continues to entertain me with regularly. Uh, the sad predator on the log. It kills me every time. Every
It's
time it makes me
fantastic.
laugh. Um, yeah, for those of you guys that haven't checked out Prey, my second favorite Predator movie for sure. Um, Definitely my favorite post 1980s. Um,
And,
yeah,
it's the original photo on the
there it
phone.
is, right there. It is right there. Uh, okay, Jose, you got another question, or is your hand still up from the last one?
No, I was wondering like when you're shooting something suspenseful or like a thriller, do you ever get like requests from the director about how long to hold a shot for like the edit or like like to create suspense? Like do you ever get requests from the editor? 'Cause like I don't know, they're the one who kind of cuts it.
Yeah, so typically there's no communication with the editor as an operator. As a DP, sometimes I might get notes. But it also depends on their relationship with the director. But when the director gives notes like that, I'm always very thankful because I can't hear the music that they're going to put to it, and I can't always, see how this scene will play out. Sometimes you shoot something and you're like, oh yeah, this is, it's this big 5 minute deal or whatever, and then it's just part of a different thing, and it only lasts 10 seconds on screen. But sometimes they know that going in, and so it's always helpful to get an idea of tone from your director. Those are really good notes. As an operator, you don't want to be dependent on notes. Like you want to tell your own story and have I'm working towards their vision, so I'm trying my best to understand what they want. But when there's a lack of understanding, I have to fill that gap with my own story. That way I'm not saying like, oh, well, you said cut, so I just put the camera down. And by that, I mean like I've read the script, I'm trying to get to know this character. And so if I see them in this emotion, and it just feels like I want to lean in as a person, I will just lean in with the camera. And so that's something that I'm constantly doing is making those choices on my own. We're trying to think of like where is that we want to go, and a lot of the times I might um write on a piece of dialogue where the person finally like has their coming of age moment and they're bigger, taller, they could stand strong. It's like bring the camera down, um like literally just start making them a bit more of a hero, looking up at them. Those sort of things very often are just by feel. And that's part of the job as an operator, where you get a lot of creative agency, but at the same time, it's really dangerous if you don't understand that it's truly somebody else's thing. Um, and that's something with every department where I think everyone needs to really understand is that there's so much you don't know that you have to be humble when your director or somebody says, no, 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 this is how I want to go about it. um, to a certain extent, like you obviously want to give them advice, you want to give them the best shot, but it is their thing, and they have read versions of the script that you don't even know exist. They've heard studio notes that you didn't know exist. Maybe the actor said, "I never want to be shot from this direction" or whatever. That they should tell you. But the point being is that um, it depends on where your communication's at, but those conversations are always helpful.
Uh, Ethan wants to know if you remember your first industry job experience and how it was.
I guess it depends on when you start that clock, because I started out pretty scrappy, to say the least. But my first job ever was with the Canadian Film Center, which I assume is still around, doing their little shorts every year.
They are, and
And,
I have advocated for them for these guys to
uh,
go out and try and volunteer.
so I went
TBD.
out as a PA. When I was in high school, one of our alumni came to that high school to our little tech class or whatever and asked if anybody wanted to come out on a set. And so I said, sure. And then for the most, and like they were shooting on like a 5D. Um, but I thought it was super cool. It was really fun. And I was just like really interested in what everyone had to do. And so it was like most of my time was going out of the grip truck and saying like, can you teach me what these things are? That kind of thing. Yeah. And I think it was two years before I shot my or was worked on my first movie. And I thought it was such a big deal.
I mean, yeah, that's it, right? That's that
It was a big
progression.
milestone. The
Yeah,
movie number.
exactly, right? It's like as long as the you're doing something a little. If you were still here like 15, 20 years later, if you're still going out and volunteering as a PA on shoots with a 5D, that'd be a problem. But now you're you know big boy stuff. Um, what's your communication between uh, Oh, here we go. Yeah, what's the communication between you and your team, like the gaffer, for example, to accomplish the looks that you're going for? And yeah, like when you're doing second unit DP stuff, do you have a second unit gaffer? Is it like the best electric comes out and is the gaffer on the second unit?
Yeah, probably not your best because the best is on the truck the whole time, but it almost always should come from main unit just because they'll know the looks. The hardest thing about when you scale up production is it's not even just what's the look of the show, which if you're there and you're paying attention, you should be able to, somebody with experience should be able to kind of pick up what you typically would do. That being said, you don't want to always lean into what's typical, but the communication with them, uh, it depends a lot on your relationship. When you're shooting second unit, you're going to lean on your gaffer a little bit more simply because so like when you're in a stage, you have hundreds of pre-rigged fixtures. Those fixtures are all on a board and you have a board operator. And so let's say we walk into a boathouse set and you say, okay, well, let's turn everything on to the boathouse day look. And they'll turn on every sky panel, all the lights within the walls, that sort of thing. Whereas if you walk into a location set, like some storefront or something, well, it's completely from the ground up every time because you have no lights in there. And so in that case, I might be telling them a lot more about what I would like, specifically because there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. And so most conversations should revolve around, okay, I want to be low key for this scene, although they probably know that because that's something you stick to on the show. And let's have some high contrast in here. So let's turn off the overheads. Let's bring in from the windows. We'll push from over here and let's get a bit of a backlight from over there. Um, Typically, that's sort of the way I like to communicate is about how the light is affecting the environment and the actors, less so about fixtures. Um, if you have a good gaffer, you shouldn't have to say, let's put a 4K outside with, whatever. Like they can do the math and just say, oh, you know what, actually, like we can't actually put a 4K there because there's a car in the way. So let's go to a 10K and we'll go to the other side of the parking lot. It'll do the same thing. That would actually be better in some, whatever. But at the end of the day, he's giving me the push that's, keying from the window. That's what I need. Um, and yeah, versus if you're in the stage, you might lean on them a lot more and just say, look, let's bring down this half of the ceiling here because I don't want it to be too toppy, um, that sort of thing. So they're sort of just affecting what's already in play. Um, yeah, I don't know that you have to get pretty granular into that. I could probably talk about that all day.
And I know like sometimes the gaffer ends up doing second unit stuff as well, right? Like the gaffer on The Wire ended up DPing all of the second unit stuff, like second season on or something like that. And again, like it's if when you're moving somebody into that second unit DP position, you want somebody who's been working sort of hand in hand with the director of photography on the main unit, and whether that's camera operator or gaffer or whoever. You need somebody who is experienced enough to sort of take those looks and emulate them.
Yeah.
When
But if you were to scale up even further than that, you might have a second unit team that is just second unit. So like on a big show like Shazam, they might not work 5 days a week, but you have an entire crew on the schedule, and their job is both to shoot second unit, but to do their homework about main unit. They're watching the dailies, and so now you have people who are being paid to learn the show, and that would be the ideal way to do it.
right.
Like Game of Thrones, for example, like it's not like they're doing, oh, we'll shoot 10 days here, and then we're going to send you off to this. It's like they're just shooting units at the same time. They're
Yeah.
just going to have a 30-day shoot. Um, just in the chat here, the IMDb credit for Shazam uncredited just refers to like I wasn't in the principal camera team, so I'm not actually credited in the at the end of the film. So if like essentially I did like 30 or 40 day calls is a good way to like describe that. Um, at some points I was on second unit, at some points I was on C camera. Sometimes I would just be prepping them if they were doing like, oh, we're gonna have this camera package for this shot or something. I would get that ready. VFX units, that sort of thing. Um, So in camera department, we're mostly credited for things, but in a lot of departments, you get a ton of uncredited credits.
Uh, what was the biggest challenge you faced when you were starting out? That's a good question, Sid.
Is a good question. I'm not sure.
I mean,
No.
you didn't have like
A
a
small challenge is, I
you're
guess,
not,
the real.
you didn't have like you weren't a nepo baby, so there wasn't like an easier path where like Uncle John could like just sort of shoehorn you into whatever production. You know, you earned it.
Well, yeah, I guess originally the challenge was just being busy.
Yeah.
I will say,
Tell him a
general,
story where you just picked up and moved, man. Just, like that
a
was
few times.
big. Yeah, a few times, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, all of that is hard. I guess some of the more interesting challenges are what projects to take or how to pursue. Um, it is, I don't like self-advertising. I don't like schmoozing or going to parties or anything like that. So it is quite tough sometimes to approach work the way that you should. Something I always have to remind myself is like now that I've been on the other side and I'll hire out camera teams, or at least I used to as an A focus puller all the time, is thinking about how annoyed I would get when I'd find out that there was somebody good who was available because they didn't give me their resume or they didn't let me know. And so that I always am reminding myself, it's like, well, look, this production would benefit from having me, so it would be foolish for me not to give them my resume because I don't want to bother them, right? And so I've got it fairly dialed now, where if I want to approach a project, um, I have the confidence to just sort of reach out and say, "Hey, here's my things. If you could pass those on, that would be great." But I'm always very careful. I never ask for anything. I'll never ask you for a job, only ever an interview. Is something I live by. Um, because the people who have the jobs, there is this sort of power dynamic, and it can get really uncomfortable really quickly because they know that, if you're approaching them for a job, you want something from them. Therefore, they have to be a bit afraid of what you have to say.
right. Um, Jess, what do you ask Gaffer for a music video for this question, Mike? I'm not exactly sure what she's asking. Noah Kahan's sixth season?
Uh, no, I've never been a gaffer. I think there was an old IMDb credit I'm unable to get rid of as a gaffer. Might be it. I don't know. There's another one of the second AC I didn't do, and they won't let me take that down either.
IMDb, so it's kind of like Wikipedia. Like people kind of slap stuff up there. Longest production time you've had for a single scene? Ooh, that's a good question.
There was a scene in Shazam where there's a bus going down the highway, and I forget what's happening. There's like a demon on the bus or some kind of crap, and it goes over the edge of a bridge. Shazam catches it. We shot that over 3 months. And it was because we shot plates of it on the Gardner Expressway. We shot the actual scene that was outside on the or in Hamilton. We were able to close down some highway there just because you can't actually close the Gardner for very long. And then we built a highway for maybe 100 meters on the stage, and that's where we shot the actual thing going off the edge. But anyway, so about 3 months for that one 5 minute scene.
Posted that link there. Oh, here we go. When you're an AC, who is more of a nightmare, the director or the DP? Oh, come on, Hosa. Obviously, we know the sound guy is the answer.
Ideally, neither of them should be a nightmare. You are there to serve them, but the DP is the only one who really should be able to be a nightmare. At a certain point, and I've seen this on set where some people are maybe enjoy drama. I'm sure you see this in school, but those sort of people who enjoy drama will step outside their lane to find it. So if you're an AC and you're having beef with the director, is you're the problem. You shouldn't really be talking. If it's an unfun time to talk to somebody outside of your department, avoid it. Just don't do it. The DP sometimes could be harsh or whatever, and that can just suck. If you're a focus puller and the DP is not polite when you buzz or something like that, that can be awful. I've also had DPs who just they're having a bad day and then they start to be cranky or whatever, that kind of thing too.
Hey, you never know what somebody's going through. Oh, so I've got a bunch of these guys are going out to work for Bob Charters. He
What's Bob doing? Sam?
so he finally left Brain Power. Get this, like 6 months ago.
Great Power's still going, eh?
He was still there until six. He said I went out for beers with him, and I had about a year where I was on salary and I was working, but that just gave me nothing to do ever. He was like, I just did nothing. I was on salary for a whole year and there was nothing for me to do. So I finally just said like, I'm going to move on. So he started, he's doing like short form commercial content, kind of locally in and around like Barrie and Collingwood. So a bunch of these guys are going to help him shoot a series of commercials for Napoleon Home Comfort, which is where Meg works. So all of these guys are under, those of them that are going out to work on this are under strict orders not to embarrass me because they're working for both my old time friend and my wife's boss.
He's also a
Uh,
startup. Give him a break, guys. He's just trying
yeah,
to figure it out.
yeah. So he's good. He won a bunch of awards in Barrie for like the cool like cutting edge upstart. And he's doing all these commercials for these local businesses. Having Keith star in a bunch of them. So those guys are
Cool.
still all trudging away. But yeah, so was that next? Is that next week, you guys? It is next week, isn't it? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that. Yeah, 8th to the 11th. So they're all going to be shooting at my wife's work. So I'm gonna have to go kick down the door and make sure everybody's behaving themselves. Be a
That's
fly,
awesome.
fly on the wall observer.
We'll have fun.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions for Mike? Like, while you got him here, you want to pick his brain about AC stuff, about Steadicam stuff, about working as a DP. Like, anybody got anything else they want to ask? Hosa, you've been full of
Yeah.
questions. You got one more for us? It's been great. Hosa worked over the summer at Ontario Camera.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
She's in and Hosa Bob told me he tried to hire you and you told him to shove it up his ass. Those were his exact words. He said Hosa told me to shove it. We wanted to hire her. She said I'm
Yeah,
too good for this place and started spitting in everybody's faces.
yeah, more or less like
More or
that.
less.
Yeah.
More or less. So yeah, we
Um,
got a couple more. I got a couple more people that planted in there for a couple months this winter.
Yeah.
Um, they've become kind of a partner. We've got them providing a truck and a camera package for our sort of end of year
Nice.
film production that we do in April every year.
Yeah.
No, any more questions, guys? Anything else?
Yeah, we got a question.
Oh yeah, what's up? Who's that? That's
Yeah,
Sam?
that's me. Hello,
Hey,
hello.
hello, Sam.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Yep.
can hear you, Mike. You should see. Sam has the most obscene collection of weird old lenses you've ever seen in your life.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Just glass coming up. What was the one you bought? He bought some weird cine glass that he didn't know what it was. And where did you took it to Panavision? And did you
I
get
was
any
trying to get it
answers on that?
fixed.
Oh, what did
It still needs some adjustment.
What is it?
It's a it's a 40 millimeter cinemascope,
Cool.
like the
Uh,
actual Hollywood one.
yeah. What's
Yeah.
your issue with it?
The aperture was broken, so now they fixed it, but now I think the lens elements are slightly out of line, so we gotta still figure that out.
Fair. What's your stuff?
Nightmare.
this guy's got a more expensive hobby than the only hobby more expensive than my Lego Star Wars old lenses and getting them repaired. Okay, sorry, Sam. Continue. What is
Yes.
your question?
Yeah, what kind of equipment should we like have if we want to like get into like being like a first AC or second AC?
Yeah, I
Ooh,
mean that's a good question. For the most part, I really advise people to not overdo it with the gear because again, it's like as you're getting started, you have all this energy and you want to put it somewhere.
Hmm.
I I've been able to have a lot of the opportunity I have because I save money, so that you can wait it out and get a good project, especially when you're starting out. So that's something to keep in mind is you don't want to be piss broke because you have all the cool whatever it may be. But for sure, as an AC, you're going to want to have a belt, especially just starting out. So like basic stuff, Allen keys, pens, notebook, that sort of thing. Like it's not too crazy. Your Kim wipes. When you're on a show, you're replenishing that stuff through your expendables budget, so that production will be paying for it. But you do want to have it for those indies or whatever. Like you bare minimum, you need to be able to clean lenses, that sort of thing. And then once you're working a little bit, like a ditty bag is going to go a long way. And if you don't know what a ditty bag is, maybe Kyle can help out and sort of describe
Yeah,
all
we can
that.
talk about that a little bit. Yeah. Where have you got yours back there somewhere? Oh, there it is.
Ditty bag there. It's just a normal camera bag, loaded up with a ton of stuff. There's my Steadicam post. It's in pieces right now because I'm doing some maintenance. Um, but I would say that should get you through pretty much anything. Like you could
Yeah,
go on to, the Avengers as a C camera second and just bring a ditty bag and a belt. You'd be fine. And the reason I say that is I know so many people who start out and then they have six different camera carts and they're trying to buy this little adapter for this or whatever. And it's like, look, you have $100,000 worth of things and nobody's paying for it.
yeah, yeah. Although
So,
you did you went out and you bought that Teradek unit and Brainpower basically paid for that after what, like half of a movie and a half.
so that was a follow focus. That's a little different.
Or sorry, yeah, not the Teradek. You bought your follow focus. It wasn't like a crazy fancy one, but it got you a boosted day rate on that, and was maybe
Yeah, well,
useful
once you're
beyond
up and going, there's certain items that you can purchase just that you can get rental for. And because they're tools that are very specific to you and your job, not just like every focus puller has this. So like the actual thing I pull focus with is something I purchased. Like as an operator, I have my own monitors, just so that, and it's a DP, but every job I want the same image and I want the same exposure. That way I'm not relearning every freaking time. And so yeah, I've even like I'll take that out for free just because it allows me to be more effective at my job, like a light meter or something like that.
But
Uh,
if you can get a few extra bucks on a kit fee, certainly not going to say no. Certainly not going to
which
say
is
no.
nice, but at that point you do want to be making dollars before you start spending them on something like that.
Yeah,
Like don't ever think that you need to bring a follow focuses. Like they rent one on every production. You don't need to be optimizing how much money you make on every show. You want to kind of work your way up.
right, right.
Because I know all sorts of people who during the strike, for example, who, have very expensive equipment or whatever, and all of a sudden they're forced to sell it at the worst time ever. And I saw that in spades.
Yeah, yeah.
All
Some
sorts
of
of
them,
people who had just too much equipment and now they're selling, 100 grand worth of gear for 20.
yeah,
Um,
just so that they can keep making those payments or whatever. Yeah.
yeah. So again, I
Yeah,
always lean on the side of being frugal until it makes sense.
yeah, those like used film equipment groups during that strike were just like a modern day Silk Road, man. That was the time to go and pick yourself up an Alexa for 32,000, even if you had to fly to the UK to do it. What must not? What's a mistake that you don't want to make as a junior AC, like a trainee?
Interesting. That's a great question. I think for the most part is if just write stuff down. If somebody asks you to swap batteries on something or whatever and you can't immediately do it, just make a note, get used to that. Because as things scale up, you will have to do that. So build that habit young. Also, if I ask you to, hey, can you bring me some Pancro to set, like a lens cleaner? So you're not going to immediately do that. You'll do that next time you go to the camera truck. So write it down when you're on the camera truck, go through your list and do all those things. And then when you come back and you don't bring it because you forgot, I won't be upset because I saw you write it down. Like I can tell that you're trying. Versus if you just look at me and you go, yeah, yeah, and then it doesn't come, well, now I'm gonna be pissed. It's very simple way to cover your ass. Another one is read the call sheet. Nobody reads the freaking call sheet. And it is infuriating. Ask people like learn how to read a call sheet properly. Um, because it is the most important document. And the amount of times you'd have somebody showed up at the wrong crew park because you're doing two locations and there's a unit move or whatever it is. Like it can be easy if you skim the call sheet to miss things. And if you have a trainee or something who's multiple times late because they didn't see that they have a different call time than the actual call time because they're not actually checking by their name, like something like that, just it comes off very lazy. Even if that's not what you're trying to do. So I would say read the call sheet, read the sides, just have an idea what you're doing. Yeah, those will get you pretty far. And then something I'm always thinking about as a trainee and then all the way up is what are we doing next? And so if you ever have any free time, A, you should be cleaning as a trainee. Um, but the real thing is, are we after this scene going to do a move to the next part of the stage? Or are we going to be shooting in the bedroom and the next thing's in the living room? It's like so because we know that, we should start clearing out the living room of all our stuff. That way our department looks good and we can move quickly, that sort of thing. But just doing those things and sort of scaling them out will take you really far.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. Reading the call sheet. 'Cause you wonder, guys, why we get angry that you don't read your assignment sheet. We're training you for the real world. Tanish wants to know, like, what's in terms of like work season wise, how does BC compare to Toronto?
That's a good question. It sort of changes throughout the year as the years go by. I guess BC is a lot more of a TV town. There's just are less large features. The main difference, I would say, is that Toronto has a big indie scene and BC does not.
Mm,
Uh, so out here in BC, and this is actually why I'm in Toronto's union, there's a big feud between the unions and indie production here. And so in BC, the unions, because they had a really big drought for, I think it was like 2013 through 16 or something like that, where there was very, very little work. And so you had thousands of members with no income and no jobs. And so the union tried to push more and more indie shows to flip union to give their members work. And so we're still living kind of in the wake of that because when they make these decisions, they go into lawyers and then they end up in the paperwork. All is that to say is that if you're shooting a $500,000 movie here, you're going to get a huge amount of pressure to go union, which means that it changes your financial structure, makes it really tough. Whereas in Toronto, there's, at least from when I worked there, a huge indie market. Like all those things with brain power that like Kyle and I were doing, they would have been pushing those to go union and they would have been facing a lot more pressure.
yeah.
They certainly wouldn't be able to operate the way that they did, which means that they probably wouldn't have existed. And so I'd say take advantage of that in Toronto. It is much easier to jump between commercials and union work in Toronto. BC is also divided in that sense. So yeah, what's nice is that you get a lot more diversity of work out in Toronto, which will always make you better.
How do you how do you impress your key grip on your first set with them? Colored tape, multi-tool, Allen keys, uh, a,
Nobody
a nice cold 12 pack slid onto the grip truck is always a good way to make friends.
Um, Impress your key grip. Honestly, like
You,
taking care of the equipment. A lot of them own their gear. If they don't, their whole department is sort of represented with their equipment. So like if you set up a C stand, do it the proper way. Even though you probably can just kind of throw it up and it's fine. If you're doing the stash, like the squirrel stash on set, especially, put all the carts in a row, make them nice, make sure all your stands are lined up nicely, um, because that'll go really far. That'll set you apart from almost every group. Um, but and also like a lot of times C stands will get like a little bit loose or jiggly, and it's just like Allen keys need to be tightened or whatever. And if they catch you doing stuff like that, they're gonna want to bring you out every time because not only do you make them look good, but you're making their gear better and like you're doing the maintenance that isn't necessarily like it's part of the department's job, but it's not any one person's job. And so yeah, I'd really just focus on making sure the gear looks good. And also in the grip department or lighting department, you have ebb and flow of work. quite a bit. Camera's a little bit more steady where you're like you're busy, busy, busy. Um, but it is one of the bigger challenges I found in the lighting departments was not getting distracted when you have nothing to do. Um, so like keeping busy by cleaning is always like a helpful way, but you don't want like while they're rolling is where the grips are doing nothing usually. Um, or blocking or something like really delicate, important moments on set. And the last thing you want is the grip department all laughing or on their phones or telling some raunchy joke or something. And so uh, just being respectable when it's hard to be is good advice.
That's good. Okay. I think we can probably wrap things up now, unless anybody has any sort of important last minute things they'd like to throw out there. Um, Thank you so much, Mike. It's always great when you come in and chat with us.
Of
So good
course,
to
yeah,
see you.
super fun. Anybody's a question about their own project too, feel free.
Yeah, yeah. You guys can follow Mike on Instagram. He's got all kinds of stuff going up on there with some regularity. I think. Are you still doing that? You still doing?
I should do more. I should do more. That's
I mean, it's okay to just say that, especially in these tumultuous times, that we're all done with social media, all
it's
AI.
fun. I like to share. It got trickier and trickier when you get into like bigger and bigger IP. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
where like now studios are looking at my Instagram like, oh, is he able to share that? And it's
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got scared by a few
You
emails.
didn't like the Prey marketing department didn't like throw you a few bucks for your photo. Be like, listen,
Well, they don't know that that's my phone.
this one got 8 million hits on Reddit. Like, thank you for that. Here's an extra day rate for you.
I won't say who it was, but I know I sent that photo to one person who is the reason that's out there. So
I seem
they're
to recall
very up there on the call sheet, so it's fine.
I seem to recall that story. Um, our DPs protect, Hosa. We're not going to talk about DPs versus AI. Okay, that's
Well, it's not a bad question, I guess. Like, nobody can project out what that's going to look like. But what I will say is that you do want to like keep in mind that AI is kind of meaningless without prompting, and if we get to the world where it doesn't get prompts, then there's no point.
yeah,
And if you are using those to help you with your job, um, it's really like you want to use it for inspiration, and it can be a really useful thing. And so if you are typing in a prompt and just like Rembrandt lighting or something like you can look these things up. Um, Learning how to utilize it to help you with your job is a helpful thing, and those people will go a lot further, it'll last a lot longer, I think.
yeah.
Um,
Just another tool in the bag. I mean, the thing I always like to, when somebody asks me about it, whether it's a big threat to like sort of camera and lighting, I always say like, well, like we've had autofocus for like 30 years, but like focus puller is still a very important job on set. Like
the most important thing is going to be input and control, and that's something that is extremely difficult right now with AI. I think it will continue to be simply because I don't think anybody really can appreciate how much freaking control we demand on set. Like it would be very easy to just crank stuff out if you don't care, but you would be blown away by how much studios and all that care about the tiniest little things.
yeah, I think it's coming for the black fawns more than it's coming for the big studios. Like somebody like Chad getting started now would be able to just make their whole movie without using and abusing guys like us.
Yeah, I feel like animation might be the first place where it actually is successful.
Yeah,
Just
yeah. Well,
because
like brain power, we would do the animatics and all the writing and stuff in house, but all of the animation itself was done just in like these animation farms in the Philippines or in Vietnam or like wherever. Like I think a
I
lot
find
of
that process isn't very different. You're just instead of shipping it off to a country that won't pay their people well, you're just doing it on a computer.
you just do it on a computer. Yeah, it's. I think it's definitely going to wreak havoc on sort of overseas. Some of the like lower wage countries are really going to get hit in the teeth. But like you're not going to replace. I mean, I was when I did that 6 months with Triptych on Man Called Otto and John Wick. Like we spent like 4 weeks back and forth with the director talking about what a muzzle flash should look like in like a 3 frame shot.
Yep.
Like coming out of a shotgun. Like the amount of like the how particular they are about every little decision. Like there's just no There's no just throwing an AI blanket at it. You're still going to have like human artist involvement. So, but Sam is right. It's all moot because they're gonna load the AI into the Roombas, and then the Roombas are just going to murder all of us. We're just going to all be dead from our vacuums because they'll decide, you know what? I don't have to clean this house. So there's no humans in it, and then we all just die.
Yep, that's what's gonna happen for sure.
Anyway, that's a fun note to end our. This is a fun.
Everybody remember to watch Terminator 2.
Yeah, everybody watch Terminator 2. Play some Arc Raiders. Get out there and fight the robots. Okay, so thank you so much, Mike. This has been a delight. Everybody, say thank you to Mike. There it is. Yeah, we'll hit him up with a follow on Instagram. You can see some of the stuff he's worked on over the years that doesn't violate any non-disclosure agreements. And
well, feel free if you have any technical questions too at any point. You can just reach out. Yeah, we're all nerds, so it's always fun.
100%. Okay, thank you so much, Mike. Thank you, everybody, for your thoughtful questions. I'll have this recorded, so anybody that did miss, or if you want to go back and review, you can check it out. I'll get that posted up on Blackboard today. Remember, your industry or your tech scene analysis or your Hollywood shot recreation are due for me on Friday. And I'll see you guys all next Monday for combat cinematography, where everybody will get a chance to punch Callum. Okay? Okay, thanks again, Mike. I love you. I miss you. Love beers next time you're here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get some skiing in. Okay, bye, guys. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, Kai.